Hi, I'm Cathy van Eeden. I live in Swellendam at the moment, but I was born and bred in Cape Town. But my connection to the place Malgas was actually because we got a little holiday place there when I was about 3 years old. At the time, of course, there was nothing there. There weren't the holiday places that there are now. And my father actually went on a little fishing trip, and on a very windy day, they went up the river, and he came home and he said to my mom he really wants to get a little place there. They didn't have a lot of money, so they went to one of the local farmers and said if there isn't a little house that they could have. So the Van Us family very kindly gave us a place there, and ever since then we used to spend all our holidays there. And that was where I formed my love for Malgas. I will tell you a little short history about Malgas. I'm not a historian, so I'm not going to bore you with dates and that sort of thing. But just generally speaking, when the Portuguese came around the Cape, they saw the river mouth of the Breda River. That's at Cape Infanta. This is actually a picture of the beautiful estuary. They saw that as being a great inland port and one of the only navigable rivers of South Africa. And that, of course, was recorded. And many years later, a General Moody thought, this is actually quite a good place to have a trade. It's close to Malgas and close to Swellendam, sorry. So he started the wheels rolling to get a trading ship going. He then went back to England without completing that task, and the Barry family, who became very famous in this town, they actually brought industry in here and trade. Thomas Barry, he commissioned a boat, a special boat that could be made to travel up the Breda River to bring necessary supplies to Malgas. Malgas was 22 miles up the river and an important farming area at the time, and they would then put their wool, grain, aloe products onto the trading boat, which would then navigate down the river again to Cape Town and even as far as Port Elizabeth. Then this boat was called the Cardi. It was a steamship, but had also sail. So if so that it could go across the bar of the river, which the ship could not be deeper than 6 feet, which is about 3 meters. And the Cardi was completed in 1859, and very successfully traveled up the river, made about 200 trips. Now you can just imagine in those days what a celebration it was when this Cardi boat arrived at the port of Malgas, and the church bell would ring, and the farmers would come down in their ox wagons and collect possibly things that they'd ordered 6 months before that came from Cape Town, and they would also bring their goods then to be transported on the Cardi. So of course it was a very jolly time. There was a little settlement at Malgas because of the Cardi arriving there, with a hotel, with a pub. The little church was there, and that is the church that was formed, and that was the same year as when the Cardi was finished, which was 1859. This is a Bowler print, Thomas Bowler, who was a very famous artist of those days. It's not a very good copy for you to see because it's a copy of a print. But there you can see the steamship, the Cardi, going up the river, and on the left there's a little hill which they called Kanonskop, and on there they would fire the cannon so that the farmers and everybody would know that the Cardi was about to get to Malchas. This is the church bell, and the bell would of course be ringing away to let everybody know that the Cardi was there. But unfortunately this only lasted for 6 years and 200 trips, because the Cardi then was shipwrecked at the mouth of the river, and in 1865 he made his last trip. So Malchas then actually became a nothing. There was nothing there anymore, because there was no trade going on. So there were just a lot of it just went back to the farmers. But while they were still trading with the Cardi, the produce had to get to the other side of the river, and with the Breda River being quite a wide river, they built a pontoon. And of course this is also a very, very bad, because this is an original photograph, the bottom one, and you can actually see an ox wagon going across the pontoon to the other side. It was a wooden structure. It was only later on was it made and commissioned as a steel structure in the 1960s, and this steel structure is still today being used across the river. But the pont was originally built for the supplies from the Cardi. The church that was built, that I showed you before, but I'll just remind you, was also built for the local farmers. And there's a minister, a Dutch Reformed minister, that used to go along this road. It was a terrible road in those days, and preach there once a month, and he still does that. So that is basically, and the Cardi even went to Australia with a whole load of ostriches. So it was quite an adventurous little ship until it became shipwrecked, unfortunately. Now, to get back to the church, interestingly enough, we have a very famous music composer who lives in Swellendam, and his name is Bram de Tooy. And they are busy at the moment producing a film directed by Oliver Hermanus on the book called Morphe. And the book is written by Andre Carl van der Merwe, and it is about a young man that was sent to the army in 1981 in South Africa. The name, of course, describes it all, because he must have had a terrible experience going to the army in that year. And so they commissioned Bram de Tooy to write the music for the film. And of course, it's quite an emotional film, and it has a lot of emotion. And he has written the most beautiful music. And instead of recording this in a sound recording studio in Cape Town, he just felt, because it's such an emotionally packed piece of music, he was looking for the right ambience where the music could be recorded. And he contacted me, and I said to him, look, why don't you go and have a look at the little church at Malchas? And we went along, and he had a look, because this church has seen so much family histories, funerals and births and weddings, and so it's just loaded with emotion as well when you do go inside this little church. And of course the sound engineer, being a technical man, threw his hands in the air and said, "Oh no, I'm not going to this little town called Malchus, because what about the power and all the rest of it?" But Bram pushed through, and about 2 weeks ago he came with his group of musicians, and as it happened to be, all the musicians that he was keen on having playing his music, they were all free for that whole week, and they recorded in this little church. And here you can actually see that's Bram de Toy, of course, sitting listening to his music and making sure that it's being reproduced the way he wants it. And here is them actually recording in the church. They were very lucky. They got a lovely house on the river where they could all just stay and stay for the week, so that they could team build and inspire each other. And so it was very successful. And just to prove how old this church is, this is one of the graves that's outside the church, dating 1868. So it's steeped with history. And so I really look forward to seeing this film with this beautiful music. And then let's get on to maybe not such a nice subject. The mouth of the river is, of course, a very healthy estuary. It's loaded with fish. It has some of the biggest cob in the world that's caught there, 50 kilograms and upwards cob. And for years, the fishermen have always spoken about these ghost sharks. And of course, the river does come down as fresh water. So what are these sharks? It can't be the great whites, because they can't go into fresh water. But these fishermen would say, yes, and we caught this big cob, and just the head would come out. And so there's something going on there. But just a little bit up from the river, the water starts to get very dark because of the river water that's going down. And so nobody could really see what these sharks were. And then in 2009, a scientist went to go and research the bloodworm that was at the mouth of the river. The bloodworm gets pumped out, and that's used as bait. And his wife, who happens to be a shark scientist, she came along with him. Listen to all these tales that these fishermen were saying, and because she specialized, she thought this rings a bell, and I wonder if it isn't the Zambezi sharks. The Zambezi sharks are North Mozambique area, but they need a safe estuary to have their pups in, and it has to be a healthy estuary as well. And so she started to inquire, and she got some funding, and she put an expedition together to see if they could find out more about these Zambezi sharks. And very soon they caught a 4-meter bull shark, which was in the water. It was actually 15 kilometers up from the mouth. And they tagged it with a little tag. They took their measurements, weighed it, everything else. It was enormous, and she was obviously pregnant as well. And they released her as quickly as possible, because otherwise the shark goes into too much stress, and tagged her 30 kilometers upstream. So all these people that had holiday houses along the thing, they went up in arms, of course, because now there are these bull sharks that are floating around, but they've been there forever, and they researched them, and they realized that this is an ideal breeding place for them. They tagged another one, and they got the tag in Mozambique. So these sharks come down, breed here, give the fishermen quite a hard time, because they actually lie underneath the boats, and as the fisherman is bringing up his catch, they catch the bottom half. So it's like pick and pay for them in the mouth of the river. But nobody's ever been bitten. And while they were tagging this, they called it Nyami Nyami. And while they were tagging it, they could see exactly where it was going, and it would actually go in a meter water. So it was quite close, would go close to fishermen, but we're not on their diet list. So, but luckily these fishermen were completely unaware of this massive shark going around. So she must be still in the Breda River with all her little friends that come down. So and then before I finish, because the pond is such a symbol of Malgas. I mean, everybody knows the Malgas pond. It's become quite a tourist attraction, and they actually designed South Africa's first gravel bike race, which there's one option is a 100-miler, there's a 60-miler, and there's a 25-miler. So it's quite long, and halfway they cross the Breda River on the pond. So they have a free zone, so you get your time there. They make big fires and have roast to cook, and there's a traditional band playing, and everybody just loves this, and always says one of the great attractions of the Around the Pot race is the stop at Malgas, and also to go across the river, and then you start again with your time on the other side. This year they had 1,200 riders that entered. So for tourism, it brings a lot for the town, because with the families and support, we get about 3,000 people that come into our town. So we're very grateful to the Around the Pot organizers, and the race is organized by Petrichor Adventures. And that is my little talk finished. Thank you very much for listening to me.